Wow! Not only did we get an amazing episode of Mushoku Tensei, but we also got a Spy X Family anime announcement, which is trending on Twitter. Trending more than Limp Bizkit's return album for their first album in 10 years, by the way. It's titled Still Sucks. Why I'm bringing up Limp Bizkit, I don't know, but let's go ahead and talk about Mushoku Tensei because this episode was absolutely phenomenal. This episode went by so quick looking at my notes, but I have a page and a half of notes, so I don't know if this video is going to be like 3 minutes or 25 minutes based off what I have here, but the episode starts off where they're traveling to this very mountainous setting. Actually, initially I was like, is this like a fantasy version of Colorado? I mean, this looks really beautiful, but it's actually Milishun? I don't really know how to pronounce it. I always ask you guys in the comments to help me pronounce some of these names, so I'm gonna need help on that. But new guy, Geese, as his name is, he parts from the dudes and he goes on his own way to go out, do his own thing, I assume. Probably to gamble, most likely. But when Geese parts, he tells Rudy to remember that there's an Adventurers Guild, which will be very important in the next couple episodes, as we didn't get to the Adventurers Guild in this episode at all. Though Rudy, Eris, and Rudy are kind of talking, and Rudy wants to stay in the city so he can earn more money and it's more efficient, but as well, this is really cool. He wants to basically sell like anime figures, which is what he's been creating for past multiple episodes, really since the first part of season 1. He's been making these things. I think he made the first one for Roxy, I'm pretty sure, but he wants to improve the reputation of the Suppards, and to do that, he's going to sell these figures, which I think is actually really cool of Rudy. We get these really very ingenious moments from Rudy where he's kind of like this MacGyver of just these weird out of nowhere issues that he comes up with these interesting ways to solve. Also, it makes sense with the whole, appealing to a degenerate kind of audience with, having anime figures. I mean, I have an anime figure. I have Sakura Mato anime figure because she's adorable. Who doesn't love Sakura? I may be working on getting a Vladilena figure soon. I'm thinking about that. It just depends. Give this video a like if you want me to get a Vladilena figure. But anyways, Rudy, after this, he wants to write a letter to Paul. Of course, it makes sense for him to do that. He's been adventuring for so long, and while he's thinking of what to do, we learn that Eris and Rudy are gonna go out hunting goblins, and we get an honest to God, in my opinion, Goblin Slayer reference, which if you know the history of my channel, you know what? I'm gonna leave it up to you guys to search up Goblin Slayer on my channel. You can go and check it out if you want to. That's all I'll say on that. But I find this scene really funny because Rudy winks at Ruijerd to keep Eris safe, and all I can think of is like, this is the same girl that is not only just jacked to the gills, but she landed a hit on Ruijerd. Like, this girl can easily take out a bunch of goblins. I don't think she's gonna be like any worse for wear by the end of her adventuring with goblins, because that's just the way Eris is. She's an extremely strong, passionate, and confident character, and I believe that she could easily take out those goblins. She could probably take out the Goblin Slayer. I mean, that's how much, well, maybe not the Goblin Slayer, but, well, no, maybe. She's really, really powerful. Ruijerd definitely could, that's for sure. Put down in the comments, Goblin Slayer versus Eris, who wins? We know Ruijerd would win that fight, but what do you guys think? So Rudy sees another kidnapping, and he has these rules that he's going to implement with Dead End now. And that's rule number 1 is never ignore a kid that's been kidnapped, and rule number 2 is basically never ignore a kid that's been kidnapped. It's the same rules for both. And he sets off on this adventure, I suppose, to rescue this kid that's been kidnapped. This scene is I didn't really find this scene in particular very funny. Basically, Rudy goes in and he sees that they're the would-be kidnappers, who, by the way, are like trying to feed him and look very worried for him, which immediately I was like, wait, these guys aren't kidnappers. How does Rudy not see this? And he is feeling like this piece of cloth that's on the ground while he's behind these crates. And he's like, wow, this sensation, it's familiar. And at first, I thought this was going to be like a SAO season 1 where Kirito is grabbing Asuna's boobs in one of the dumbest scenes in that series. Thankfully, it wasn't a human woman, but it was actually a human woman's underwear. So that was interesting. And what comes next is actually funny in my opinion. He puts the underwear on his head to keep his identity safe and and announces himself as Rudy, where moments before he was like, I want to improve the subherd's reputation. He's doing this. And on one hand, I think it undoes that scene because Rudy is a kind of character where he says one thing and he's very genuine about it, but in the next couple of scenes, usually he goes back and does something that makes that previous scene seem kind of dumb. Like, oh man, yeah, I want to help the reputation, but at the same time, I'm going to put panties on my head, try to rescue people that I think in danger, that are not actually in danger but being rescued. So it's not bad, it's this weird duality with Rudy, and I think as the show progresses, they're definitely probably going to go more into that because I've noticed that more and more they address all the things around Rudy's personality. In this episode, they did something that they usually don't do, and that's, well, you have the girl that comes in who's like scantily clad, by the way, like armored bikini, like all of the fantasy tropes, big boobs, very cute, all that stuff. Like, you have her say, I believe the quote is, enemy of all women. And I hope what they're doing here, and this is what I think they're doing, at least that's my theory, is that they're going to address Rudy's very perverted and very creepy nature around women and it's stuff when it comes to stuff like that. Because it is creepy. He has underwear on his head and he starts licking it and sniffing the underwear. And I'm like, what? That's disgusting. That's really creepy. And plus, as well, there's this stuff where I don't want to say the word because I might get demonetized, but he's the P word in his previous life. It's just very strange. And I feel like with this episode, though, they're finally kind of getting around to broaching that topic. That being said, I also think it is kind of dumb where he gets distracted by her boobs. I mean, there is a certain funniness to that, but it was just a dumb scene. Like, it's just dumb. It's just a dumb scene. Not in a bad way necessarily. It's just like, wow, they did that. But anyways, this scene was very interesting, we'll say. I think this scene is actually very important for Rudy's character in the upcoming episodes, most likely, and for his development. Because I think, honestly, this is probably the start of a turning point for Rudy's character. As we'll see later on, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this scene that has a lot of ramifications. So it turns out that, well, the person he's fighting is Paul, and it was very obviously Paul. I'm surprised he didn't notice immediately, but I guess because it was dark, he didn't notice at first. To me, he actually didn't really look all that similar to Paul because of the goatee. I figured it was because of the mole on his eye, because it's the same mole that Rudy has. And other than that, actually, it was kind of hard to tell who it was. He looked more like Gallus the Cleaner, than he did Paul, which I think is actually really brilliant because it goes to show that the art and animation for this series is really, really good. And they're very, very good at drawing characters, growing older, and in Paul's case, getting all messed up and looking the way he does. He looks all dehydrated. He's got bags under his eyes. He looks awful. But he's fighting Rudy, and actually this really cool fight scene that's really well animated that made me go, I want to see Rudy and Paul fight again. But this time, like, no stops, because Paul, holy crap. I mean, I knew Paul was a really good swordsman. We know that from the first part of season 1. Here is the thing, like, he is so good. He slices through Rudy's wall that he puts up. He basically goes through pretty much Rudy's whole defenses with ease. He almost actually messes up Rudy when he slices off the underwear. He was close to getting his own son's face. But that goes to show to me that Paul is a very powerful and strong adventurer. So, I mean, we gotta move on to the next part, because the next scene is really, really what puts things into perspective, and a very grim perspective, may I add. So we see Paul, they're in this tavern, this bar, whatever you want to call it, and they're talking to one another, and Paul, like it's hard to say this, it really is, but Paul, I feel kind of bad for him. And that's weird to say because he cheated on his wife. Nobody likes him in the series. And it makes sense because he doesn't have a very good reputation, but he's actually trying really hard to rescue all of these people that were caught in Buena Village during the Mana disaster, because all the people in Buena Village were actually teleported to just randomly, and some were enslaved. And so Paul is trying to do his best to get all these people back from Buena Village, rescue everyone, including his wife, Zenith, and, well, all of his other wives, probably, knowing Paul. But it really shows to me that there is Paul, with the way he looks, it feels like this character, and we don't know for sure, but he looks like he's at rock bottom. And it seems like being at rock bottom, he has probably noticed a few things about who he is. I think probably went through a lot of character development while we were focusing on Rudy, Eris, and Ruijerd doing their adventuring. Though I will say this, there are still some aspects about Paul, and very understandably so, based off the way he looks, that I don't think he should have said some of the things he did. Because he tells Rudy that what he was doing was going off adventuring and wasting his time with a rich girl, Eris. And I don't agree with that, but at the same time, just look at him. Of course he would say something like that. He's probably stressed out of his mind. He probably doesn't even mean what he says. But that, to Rudy, really, it hurts him. It really penetrates his armor, so to speak. And you could see it on his face, which, by the way, beautiful animation. So good. Facial expressions in this series, I've always said it, top tier facial expressions. You can't really get better than these kinds of facial expressions in this season, especially this season of anime. So we see this look of really anguish on Rudy's face, but it's very much mirrored, I think, in Paul's expressions as well, because Paul has a different look of anguish. But Rudy is like, he's just been turned down, you know? He doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good as a son to be turned down by your father like that, and to be told by your father after you do something obviously amazing as going on this adventure and doing all you did and working as hard as you can, to be told by your father, hey, you were doing nothing, you were goofing around. That sucks. And because of that, Rudy, he starts to fight Paul, so this is where a very interesting development comes in. Norn, Rudy's little sister, is it of Zenith? Is it Zenith? Maybe? I forget. Yes, it is Zenith, because the maid's daughter has different colored hair. So yeah, they showed in this episode. I'm dumb, I'm sorry. So Norn comes in, and Norn doesn't even know Rudy at all. Norn thinks that he's just bullying her father, which is not the case. And this really just puts into perspective how messed up this situation is for Rudy, and he gets really depressed. And I would too, if your sister didn't know who you are, because your father didn't bother to tell Norn, your sister, that, hey, you exist, which sucks. And maybe, we don't know, maybe Paul did that, because this could be explained later on very easily, that Paul didn't tell Rudy, or didn't tell Norn about Rudy, because Paul didn't know if Rudy was dead or alive. That's a very possibility. I think that was a very redundant thing for me to say, but here we are. Rudy asks about Sylphie, which Paul retorts, you don't even care about your own mother. And that, oh my God, holy crap. That is a low blow, but at the same time, a sobering perspective for hopefully Rudy to look within himself and go, yeah, why did I care more about asking about Sylphie at this point in juncture than, ask about my own mother? So it's a very good point by Paul. Very much is. So this last scene is one of my favorites because of the brilliant characterizations. And this is one thing that Mushoku Tensei has always been very good at. So Eris comes back from goblin slaying, and she's very excited. She's Eris, right? She comes back and she's even more energetic than she was before, because now she gets to tell Rudy about all the cool things that she went and did. And that's such a great part of Eris's character, but it also shows a very good writing technique, and that is setting the tone and mood, then resetting it again to be a more depressing mood. Because when you think Eris comes in, you think, oh, it's going to be great. But no, Rudy kind of stays in his depressed state. And Eris is really mad because of this. She notices immediately that Rudy, this isn't him. This isn't Rudy at all. And that makes sense for Eris's character quite a bit, because Eris looks up to Rudy, and of course Eris would probably be the first person to know out of 1,000 people in a room that Rudy is not doing well right now. Eris basically tries to comfort Rudy for the last part of this episode, and it's cute it's a little funny and it's heartwarming and wholesome, but at the same time, it's a little sad because Eris she doesn't know really what to do. And she's fumbling, trying to figure out how to do this. And she eventually just kind of holds onto him and hugs him. I think that's kind of beautiful for her character. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's the wholesome part, but it's also kind of the sad part because we've never seen Rudy like this before. And it's a brilliant way to introduce, hopefully, a new aspect, a new arc even for Rudy's character, to where now he's got this chip on his shoulder. He's depressed. His father basically, did what he did there, and now he kind of has to live with that. And now the reality of everything has just set in. Everyone at Buena Village is disappeared, missing, enslaved, or maybe dead. And now Rudy has to figure out what his next steps are. While we wait for next week's episode, be sure to check out last week's episode on Mushoku Tensei. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it, especially if you missed it. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.